want to derive 3 benefits from this era, from the Crusades. 3 benefits that insha'Allah ta'ala I want us to think about in light of the current situation. Firstly, the question arises, how could the Muslim Ummah have lost Jerusalem? Was it not during its prime and pinnacle? Was there not a glorious Khilafah known as the Abbasids? How could a group of ragtag, motley crew coming all the way from Europe, inching their way, walking on foot, some of them, how could they come all the way from France and nobody does anything to stop them? Where were the Salahadin? Where were the Khulafa? Where were the Ghazis? Where were the Seljuqs? Where was everybody? How could this have happened? And when you study Islamic history, you realize what we are seeing then, we are seeing right now. You see, brothers and sisters, many of us have a romanticized view of the past. We are taught things that are almost like mythology when we're children. And you know, when we're children, it's fine to romanticize the past, no problem. It's fine, you know, spice up some details and cut off some negative things, that's fine. But if adults continue to believe in the past as a fairy tale, in Islamic history as not the real history, but a romanticized history, well then they're going to repeat the same lessons and the same problems of the past, they're going to repeat them. As adults, we need to grow up and we need to call a spade a spade. As adults, we need to examine history critically and learn from the mistakes of the previous generations so that we don't repeat them. The fact of the matter is that the primary reason we lost Jerusalem back then is exactly the reason why we don't have Jerusalem now. And that is that, no, we didn't have Muslim unity. We didn't have it back then, and we don't have it now. The fact of the matter is that the Muslim world was divided into many different mini-kingdoms, many different governorships, many different principalities. There weren't 52 countries as there are now. There wasn't an OIC with a nominal leader. No, but there were governorships. There were mini dynasties and kingdoms. There were plenty of states that were competing with one another, and each one wanted its own power. And the Khalifa was simply a Khalifa in name. In reality, by this point in time, the Abbasid Khalifa was a token figure. It was the Seljuqs who were in charge. The Abbasid Khalifa didn't even have an army. Even if he wanted to declare an army, he had no army. The power was in the hands of other mini dynasties. And do you know, brothers and sisters, do you know that while the Crusaders were inching their way into Muslim territory, Muslims, these dynasties, these kingdoms, just like we see now, were fighting amongst themselves. They were waging war against each other, each one trying to capture the land of the other. As they're fighting, and literally in their backyards, the Crusaders are inching on. And they're thinking it's a trivial matter. I need to fight with my cousin. I need to fight with my brother so that I control the larger share of the pie. And I'm not joking when I say my brother. I'm not joking at all. In fact, one of the most painful episodes during the year that the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem, a few months before this incident, 2 blood brothers, both of them from the Seljuk dynasty, Ridwan and Duqaq, 2 blood brothers. One of them controlled Halab, Aleppo, and the other controlled Damascus, Damashq. They were fighting one another, each one wanting the territory of the other. The same year that the Crusaders are inching their way in Bilad al-Sham, 2 blood brothers, forget distant relatives, forget competing kingdoms that both say the kalima. They had the same father and they're fighting one another for the kursi. Don't think that anything you're seeing today is new. The same realities of the past. Internal strife, civil war, greed, wanting more dunya. And because of this, what's going to happen? The enemy is going to come in and right behind their backs go and conquer Jerusalem. And then when Jerusalem is actually conquered, do you know what the Seljuqs basically said and did? Or the people of that time, the Seljuk leaders amongst them, they basically shrugged their shoulders and said, well, technically the Fatimids conquered Jerusalem, it's their business, not ours. And that is because the Fatimid dynasty and the Seljuk dynasty were battling over control of Jerusalem. And it so happened a decade before the Crusaders that the Fatimids had won over the Seljuks. So the Seljuks washed their hands and said, it's your business, you deal with it. You conquered it from us, go ahead, you protect it. So nobody ended up, the Fatimids were based in Cairo, they were based in Egypt, and they're like, that's so far away, who's going to go there? Basically, enemies within the ummah fighting over power. And in the meantime, the outside enemy comes and simply takes Jerusalem. We need to learn from this, brothers and sisters. We need to find as much unity as we can within our own ranks. One of the other lessons we learn from the Crusades, the second lesson, is that there was no quick fix. It didn't happen overnight. 90 years it took. And during that time frame, many were the people who attempted in different ways to do so. And Allah's will that it took place in the hands or on the hands of Salahadin al-Ayyubi. But the fact of the matter is, while Salahadin is considered the hero and he deserves the title of hero, the main brains and the main person behind the reconquest was the mentor of Salahadin, Nuruddin al-Zangi. And Nuruddin al-Zangi was the one who for his entire life was trying to get Jerusalem back. He made it his life mission and goal. He made it his life mission and goal to return Jerusalem to the ummah. And he tried unsuccessfully many different ways, doing this, doing that, waging jihad, forming unification. But it was Allah's qadr. It was Allah's qadr that Nuruddin al-Zangi died and Jerusalem was not conquered. History remembers Nuruddin al-Zangi. We know his name, but his reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without Nuruddin al-Zangi, there would be no Salahadin al-Ayyubi. Why is this? What do we learn from this? Brothers and sisters, we need to lay the foundation for future generations. We don't know the impact of what's going to happen. Nuruddin al-Zangi saw this young teenager by the name of Yusuf. His actual name is Yusuf. Salahadin's name is Yusuf. He saw this young teenager by the name of Yusuf, and he saw potential in him. 18 years old, and he took him under his wing. He trained him. He gave him power. He sent him here and there, and slowly but surely Salahadin began to rise. When Nuruddin passed away, still it took Salahadin another decade, but the vision of Nuruddin was actually materialized after the death of Nuruddin al-Zangi. We don't know what efforts we're going to do is going to bring fruition. We can't necessarily look at the prize in our lifetimes. We have to plant the seeds, put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Insha'Allah, Allah shall reward Nuruddin for all that he deserves, even though he didn't see with his own eyes the conquest of Jerusalem. And we need to learn from this long-term planning. We might not see success in our lifetimes, but we need to think a generation ahead like Nuruddin al-Zangi did. The third lesson that we can derive, and of course the details are beyond the scope of the khutbah, but inshallah you can trust me on this. I have read enough books to derive some lessons from the Crusades. The third lesson we can derive, the question arises, why did it take 90 years even? I mean, after all, once Jerusalem is taken, why doesn't the ummah come together? I mean, think about it. We had an entire ummah surrounding Jerusalem of Muslims. Hundreds, thousands of people that can fight. Dozens of dynasties. And there was but one small city or one small group of European Crusaders that had overtaken Jerusalem. Why did it take so long? We go back to point number one, and which is the same issue of why the delay took place. And that is that even after the conquest of Jerusalem by the Crusaders, there was internal bickering, there was backstabbing, there was rivalry between the dynasties, and even those that were fighting for the same cause, issues happened between them. And again, because of the difficult times we live in, we need to be a little bit blunt and teach us some lessons that open our eyes. These are not romanticized facts. This is raw history. The sad reality, brothers and sisters, is that Salahadin al-Ayyubi and Nuruddin al-Zangi are both great people. We respect and admire them, but shaitan got between the two of them. As Salahadin rose in power, things happened between Nuruddin and him, and awkwardness and anger and acrimony. Salahadin became in charge of Egypt, Nuruddin is in charge of Syria, and the two of them began to have harsh words, so much so that there was a potential for a war between two great men. It's not the first time. The Sahaba also had some misunderstandings and things happen. Politics is politics, subhanallah. And there were many who criticized Salahadin. There were many who were opponents of Salahadin. And if you look at his resume, he was a politician, he was a general. Politicians are not ulama. Politicians have to do things that are gray. Politicians do things that are the lesser of two evils. So those who want perfection, you're not going to find it in a politician. Politicians, by their nature, they make the best of a very difficult situation. I thank Allah I'm not a politician. I would never be a successful one. Ulama, du'at, people of Islamic knowledge are a different category, and politicians are a different category. Nuruddin had to do things. The khutbah is not the time to get into them. He worked for the Fatimids, by the way. Over a decade he's working for a heretical regime. You know who the Fatimids were? He was their prime minister. He's working for them. And then eventually he does a coup d'etat. Certain things happen, deaths occur. Nuruddin passes away and he reconciles with the Zengid dynasty by marrying the wife of Nuruddin. Things are there. It's a gray area. If you want a saint in a politician, you're never going to find one. Politicians and saints don't go together. That's why, dear brothers and sisters, my point for here number 3, it's a very difficult one, but if you want people to benefit the ummah, the fact of the matter is, those that are actually doing the job in politics, you cannot expect them to be saints and ulama. They're not walking angels. The politicians that are the most successful are those that make the best of a really bad situation. They're not those that are completely innocent. The era of the Khulafa al-Rashidun is gone. That was the only time, those 4, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali radiallahu anhum, the only time when the best of the ummah was in charge of the ummah. That's why we call it Khulafa al-Rashidun. After that, what happened, happened. So in our time frame, brothers and sisters, you're going to find people, those who want to criticize will find plenty to criticize, because nobody is an angel in that realm. We have to look overall at people who are benefiting the ummah, even if they have some mistakes amongst them. The next Salahadin al-Ayyubi that comes along, and there will be coming, no doubt about it, because Jerusalem is our land and Allah will return it to us. The next Salahadin al-Ayyubi that comes along, I guarantee you, as he is rising to power, you're going to have a bunch of people whose expertise is just criticizing. They do nothing except sit in their armchairs and criticize anybody who does everything else. We have to ignore the professional full-time critics, because they get nothing done as they find fault with everybody else. You will not find a walking angel that is a politician in general. And much can be said. I don't want to ruin your impression of some of these people, but the fact of the matter, when you read their biographies, you have to do what you have to do as a king, as a ruler, as a leader, as a general. It's not all clean. And sometimes you do things which is the lesser of the two, but you do a lot of good for the ummah, and you end up a hero, and those things that you did are basically ignored for the average person, which is fine. But now, when we're studying history, and we're seeing a repeat of that time when Jerusalem is gone, we have to be careful that we don't fall into the camp of the critics, who all they could do is look at Salahadin and look at Nuruddin and talk a lot and do nothing. Sometimes those that benefit the ummah are not going to be perfect angels, but they'll still end up benefiting the ummah. These are 3 simple lessons that I wanted to derive from that time frame. And as we conclude the first khutbah, we remind ourselves that last time Jerusalem was in Crusader hands for almost 90 years.